almost every day I read something positive about the Carolina Panthers wide receiver position. It is a remarkable turnaround from really 2 years ago, where it was a very, very difficult thing for Bryce Young to have to deal with, a porous offensive line and no weapons, and it does look like everything has turned around. Jim Szoke, man on the scene from the Panthers Radio Network, also the play-by-play voice of the East Carolina Pirates. I had to talk Pirates football with him throughout the season if he's willing to do that. Jim, how you doing?
I'm willing and able, Adam. Doing well. Hope your summer's going well.
So far, I am indoors today, so that's a positive. Is the humidity at least a little bit lower where you are? It seems like the humidity is broken here some.
No, not at all. I texted Adam earlier during the show. Like, they decided to go long today with the practice session, so we're out there for about 2.5. They started. It was like 2.5 hours almost. So it was as hot and humid as been. And the way the field's configured, we're on like the artificial turf surfaces where the media stands. So on top of that, I don't know exponentially how many degrees that adds, but we all know it's hotter than a regular surface, like the surface of, say, the sun. It's like that. So it's pretty warm, pretty humid. But like you, I think it's supposed to break on Friday and get a lot better.
Oh, yeah. This could be a glorious weekend to be outside. Jim Szoke is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. All right, let's get to the wide receiver position. A couple of years ago, it was a ghost town. And assuming that Xavier Legette takes it even a moderate step forward from what we saw last year, it looks like there are a plethora of options for Bryce Young. What's your read on that position, and how many do you figure they'll keep?
Yeah, your read from Raleigh is accurate. And I would say you mentioned also Bryce's rookie year with that O-line. It's funny, the O-line and receiver room were probably the two weakest things 2 years ago. I would argue they're both the deepest and most talented position groups on this team. But to stick to receiver, it's last year they had 7 at times. And, of course, that entails also being a returner or some kind of gunner or something on special teams. But this is, I think, the position that will have the most difficult roster cuts to make. Tepper McMillan looks very good again today in practice, as you would expect. He catches just about everything. But I think Xavier Legette will be the one that'll be interesting to see how he rises in his second year, because I want to give him the Bryce Young kind of a benefit of the doubt and some grace period, because he had some injuries, rookie year, all that. Now he comes back for a second year. McMillan should take some of that pressure and focus off of him. And I would throw in Jalen Coker as kind of the 3 young guys that are exciting. And then you have the 3 veterans. You got Adam Thielen, now Hunter Renfrow to go with David Moore. And these are just 3 exceptional human beings and route runners and professional players. And then the wild card, who I think has got to make the roster, is Jimmy Horn, because he spent a draft pick on him. He's so fast. Nobody else brings that element. He was out there returning punch today. So I think someone like Jimmy Horn would be tough to stash, I should say, on a practice squad. So I think he probably has to have a roster spot. So just naming those, that's 7, and that might be kind of what the receiver room looks like, barring something unforeseen happening.
Think they'll take 7 receivers to the start of the season? That would be awesome.
Yeah, 6 perhaps. Like, there were times they do 7. Part of that is you've got a head coach who was an offensive coordinator, was a quarterback coach, was a receivers coach. And so they always want to make sure they're well fortified there. I think you could probably go down to 6. I can't see and again, I'm talking about hybrid return special teams guys. So 6, and again, when I say keep 7, they deactivate on game day, got to get it down, 7 more or whatever. Right. So I think not all those will be active on game day, but I would think, Hunter Renfrow has been interesting. He's come in and he's made an immediate impact, and people go, well, he duplicates Thielen. Well, this could be Thielen's last year. We don't know that, but if it is, he would step right into that role, being 29 years old, or maybe he's a longer play as a veteran guy to do that possession receiver, great route runner, leadership guy. So we'll see. It's as we said, it's nice to have options. Used to be like, where are we going to get 3 receivers from? Where are we going to find 4 offensive linemen? And now it's like, gosh, we got like 9 linemen and 10 receivers. So it's a pretty good lineup right now.
So I've read a bunch about the old Hunter Renfrow. If we see the old Hunter Renfrow, what are we seeing?
A steal from Dabo Sweeney, who was at practice Monday. He said there's route runners and there's craftsmen, and you kind of start with that. And that matters so much. I mean, so much football talks like, okay, whatever, he runs a great route. The quarterback needs to know the receiver's going to be where he's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryce is a really accurate thrower of the ball. And if he's not being pressured and he processes things quickly, he will find you. So if you're where you're supposed to be, that ball's probably going to be where it's supposed to be. That's going to make the whole thing go. It's just it's a machine where everything's got to work in unison. And so I think that matters. And, of course, he's to be, again, a guy that can do some return stuff for you there. Brings an element of, good speed, good enough NFL speed, obviously. But he would be a guy to be a sure-handed third down guy, an option that should be opening up underneath with hopefully McMillan and Legette getting deeper. And we'll see. There are different ways to talk about using the slot, like Jalen Coker's being talked about maybe being in the slot. Thielen's been a guy in that position as well. I could see where Renfro could be used in that slot position. So just gives you options because Dave Canales likes to rotate guys and have different looks. And I think we'll see that everybody's going to have a chance where maybe no one's a big 1,200-yard receiver with 10 touchdowns, but a lot of guys will contribute. That's kind of what he wants to do.
Jim Szoke, Carolina Panthers Radio Network, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Also does East Carolina play-by-play. So let's get to Bryce Young. Toward the end of the year is where I thought we really started to see a much more confident, not only a confident quarterback, but a head coach that had confidence in his quarterback. Because I thought those two things were noticeable to me at the end of the season. Really weren't protecting him from himself. They were letting him go. And to me, those things are noticeable when you can watch play calling and things like that. What has he been like throughout the first week and really into, going back even deeper into the offseason?
Yeah, confidence is a big deal. And I think, there's so much talk about let's go look at Alabama Bryce tape and, try to get his confidence back. Well, now he's got NFL game success in regular season games that were competitive. And they won close games. And it wasn't all him, but they won 3 or 4 overtime games. But even being a part of a team that wins some close games in the second half of last year, I think that all builds towards making you a better player this year. So last year, to me, was like what his rookie year should have been. It just was this whole crazy thing with what happened with the coaching staff and everything being too much thrown at him. I thought last year when he had the break, got sat down, came back, as we all know, now that looked like the guy you drafted. So I think that confidence matters. But beyond that, he brought into the league intelligence, processing, accuracy of the throws. Not the biggest arm, but an adequate NFL arm for most of the throws you're ever going to need. And then I thought the fact that they let him run, like you said, a little bit too. If you look at his stats, if you just were a stat reader, you would say he ran for the same yardage he ran his first year. But it was when he ran, the decisiveness of when he ran, and that opens up things defensively. We're like, okay, he's not going to just stick in the pocket. He's going to make plays with his feet when needed, when safely able to get out there and do that. So they used it in the pass game too, like bootlegs and rolling him out. So got him out of the pocket a little bit more. I expect more layers and wrinkles in adding that. And I think Bryce is ready for that in his third year.
Jim Szoke is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Defensive line was a rough spot for them last year. Obviously, the injury to Derrick Brown got everything pointed in the right direction very early. How does that unit look to you?
Getting Derrick Brown back, even though he was on the roster last year, is the biggest thing that happened this past offseason. I mean, you're talking about one of the premier defensive linemen, whether it's interior or edge in the league. So he's going to make everything better along that defensive line. A'Shawn Robinson had a sneaky, really good year last year, kind of lost in all of Derrick Brown's stats and setting a record. Was A'Shawn Robinson had 80 tackles, most of any defensive lineman last year. So again, 10 years in the league, but just a veteran guy that knows how to play and used to line up next to a guy named Aaron Donald. So he's really good. And then just in free agency, Dan Morgan did a great job of Bobby Brown coming in, Tershawn Wharton coming in, Patrick Jones on the edge. These are veteran professional defensive line or edge rusher guys. We only had a little bit of DJ Wanham second half of last year after missing the first half of last year. So is it loaded with current-day Pro Bowl players? No, outside of Derrick Brown, but nice depth, rotational, professional guys. So I think they're going to be what you need up front to get the rest of the defense in position to do what they need to do.
Jaycee Horn coming off his first really fully healthy season. I know we're only a week in, but tell me what you see from him.
Just a guy who's loaded with physical tools and now has grown into an NFL mature player, getting into his fifth year. and he's got rewarded with that big contract, and with that comes leadership responsibilities. I love the fact that him and Mike Jackson kind of jaw with Bryce Young at practice and create competition. Because I remember that from back in the days with, it's not even to this level, but when you had Steve Smith jawing with the corners and you had these great defensive players, that's where the competition during the course of the week makes you better come game day. And now we've got that. We got some vocal leaders. We got, Trevin Wallace knocking over Chuba Hubbard and Chuba getting up, and, he's one of the leaders on the team now. He's not going to stand for that. So I like the kind of friendly banter and competition that comes within this team. So I think that's good. And I think JC's become that guy with Mike Jackson, another solid cornerback. I think we're really good there, but we're not really deep there. So it's going to be very important that those guys stay healthy, and JC proved last year he was able to do that.
How does the group replace the leadership that they've lost?
Next man up, right? So next leader's up. I think on that defensive side, Jaycee Horn's going to be one of those guys. Derrick Brown is not the biggest talker, but him being out there is going to be one of those guys that can talk along those ways. I think, again, we mentioned some veteran guys that are new. A lot of times they bring a lot of pedigree from where they came from elsewhere. It'll be interesting to see how quickly, like a Bobby Brown, Patrick Jones has been vocal out there, how much they jump in right away in that role. And personality-wise, I haven't really had a lot of interaction with Trayvon Merrick, but I think, he's such a big upgrade at that safety position. And that position, when you're the leader at safety on a defense, you have to do a lot of communicating. It just comes with that territory. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't kind of emerge as one of those defensive leaders too.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is that, Shaq Thompson had the ability, and maybe he learned from guys like Thomas Davis in terms of leadership. And while he had injury issues toward the end of his run with Carolina, it's just those types of things are hard. They're hard to lose, especially a player with as young as Carolina can be, especially with a player that just demonstrates so many such great leadership qualities. So that was the reason I asked that question. All right, we're going to check in again. I know this. State and ECU open up the season. We'll definitely talk before we get to that game. But the Panthers, everything. Is it hard to find a training camp that has been this positive?
No, and it's like they're kind of in that sweet spot as far as this 1 year period. Like they were awful the previous year when they won 2. They only won 5 last year.
Right.
But I think people feel like based on the second half of last year, they could play more like it's something that competes for a playoff spot, whether they get it or not. So they're kind of like they don't have the expectations of the great teams in the league. But now we feel like, okay, this is a team that could be right in there, be competitive every week, and it's kind of fun to watch. And Dave Canales brings a positivity, obviously, with him, too, so that energy is well fit.
Jim Szoke, at Jim Szoke on Twitter. I appreciate your time, sir. We'll talk again.
Thank you, Adam.
Take care. Jim Szoke here on The Adam Gold Show.